This is the last week of 2020. I got so much to be thankful for, and I also want to revisit my 2020 New Year resolutions and see how well I did. That being said, this has been a very tough year for many of us, and I do want to talk a little bit about it. Hi, this is Eric from Cafe Watercolor. I hope you had a wonderful Christmas holiday. I know this year might be especially difficult for family to gather. I had a good holiday with my wife and kids, and that's one of the things I am most grateful for this year. Since March, I've been working at home and didn't have many gatherings with friends and families, but I was very lucky to be stuck at home with my loved ones, even though there are times I wish the house can be a little bit quieter without kids' noise. I am fortunate enough to keep my work and have a roof over my head. I have a job that supports my family and I still get to do what I love to do, for example, painting watercolor. In the midst of all these, I know there are people not as lucky as I am, so I try to help out by donating some money, but it's like pouring a small cup of water into a huge forest fire. I know my help is very limited in the scope of things. That being said, I am very grateful for anyone who purchased a painting from me. As you know, the profits has gone to Global Giving Foundation for the COVID relief. So a huge thank you for that. I am also going to donate my YouTube ad revenue from December as well, so if you are watching, you are helping. Being an artist for me is always about connection. I hope my work touches people's heart. I've been very clear about my mission as an artist. I want to remind people that they are loved and accepted by my painting. And it's not that my painting has this profound hidden message or deep meaning. I'm simply trying to paint people, places, and scenarios that trigger good memories and accentuate something that people care about. Even if my painting brings you just a moment of joy or comfort, then that means I'm doing my job as an artist. However, thanks to the internet, I'm able to share more than just painting. I can share painting tips, process, and thought with you. I got a number of people who told me that they enjoy watching me paint. It helps them relax, and it brings them peace. While that wasn't my initial goal for this channel, I am really happy that people enjoy my content. In a way, my work is not just watercolor painting, but also all the contents that I'm making here on YouTube. And I'm very grateful to be able to have this connection with you. Now, looking back to the beginning of the year, I set 3 New Year resolutions. The first thing is to get 100,000 subscribers on YouTube. And I'm happy to report that I hit that goal about 2 months ago. And as a bonus, I got into a magazine. So that's very nice. These achievements doesn't just belong to me, but to all of you who subscribe to my channel, because I couldn't have done it without any of you. I was super excited and happy when I got my 100,000 silver play button plaque, but that excitement died out rather quickly. That doesn't mean I'm not proud of it every time I look at it, but I know this is more like a milestone of my journey, not the destination. Next year, I will be making more content for you, continue to make connection with people through my paintings and my videos. Anyways, a huge thank you to you. The second 2020 resolution was, the second thing is to become a better painter. Now, this is a bit more subjective because after Andy's workshop, I will say my work has drastically changed. Some people like this, some people don't. I used to paint more like Joseph Bookvich. He is definitely the artist who inspired me to start learning watercolor. After spending a few years learning, I do say that I have some success with that, but about 2 years ago, I came across Andy's work and I just fell in love with them. It has this clean and luminous quality that is really different from Joseph's work, and I wanted that in my work as well. So I started to learn from him, first with online lessons and videos, then I got lucky enough to be in his workshop early this year. After learning from him, I feel like the possibility has opened up. I will start painting subjects that I wasn't as comfortable with. But just like learning a new language or a new set of dance moves, it was inevitable that I produce some bad paintings, and you probably see them in some of the previous videos. I actually got comments and messages telling me that my paintings has gotten worse. They want me to look at some of the old classic like the morning fog painting and the waiting to board painting. And while these are not the most encouraging things to hear, I know the reason behind those. However, I did create a few paintings that I'm quite proud of. I'm happy that this year I am exploring new possibilities for watercolor painting. Given the fact that I only painted for about 5 years, I definitely don't want to limit myself to a specific style or workflow. So did I become a better painter this year? I do think so. While it might not reflect on my painting, I definitely grew as a painter. And for me, that's way more important than simply painting pretty pictures right now. So where do I go from here? I think next year I'm going to start to combine what I learned from Joseph and Andy, and even Charles Reed. And I'm not going to think too hard about how to combine them. I am likely just going to paint what comes the most natural for me and see what's going to happen. I'm really looking forward to it, and I hope you will be part of the upcoming journey as well. The third goal is to start working out again. This, I have to be honest, I haven't been working out much, so sadly, I don't look like a male model just yet. So this resolution will be rolled over to 2021. Okay, that's a lot of talk from me, and with that, I want to share with you one last painting demo of 2020. Before we start, if you like my content, consider give it a like and subscribe. Hit the bell icon so you won't miss my next video. Okay, let's get started. Okay, so let's take a look at this painting. This is a very simple subject. I was walking along Lake Washington at Kirkland at the afternoon of Christmas Eve, and I just came across this scenery. And even though this is a very simple subject, just a boat next to the gangway on the lake, but I can picture a painting out of it. And I think that's very important when you are picking a subject, is that you can imagine, you can envision a painting out of it. If you cannot, then you are going to have a tough time to make it a painting. So I start out by doing a value study. Since this is a very simple subject, I am making the drawing very, very loose. And I took the photo the way I want to compose the painting too, so I don't really need to change all that much. So start out with the first wash of the value study. I mix a middle value. The positive shape of this painting is actually quite little. Besides the background, the land across the lake is the boat and the gangway. So we start out by painting the boat itself, and I try to paint the reflection as well, because that's also part of the middle value. And I connect that to the gangway. Now the gangway, even though part of it is hit by the sun, so it's actually quite bright, I still just try to simplify and make it a middle value. So as you can see, it's actually quite simple. The window of the boat, the gray paint on the boat, they are all part of the middle value. And now I'm painting the background. Try to keep the background quite simple. You can leave a little bit, a tiny little bit of white to suggest there's some buildings and stuff in the background. But don't make them too big. If you leave too big of the white, it's going to break the scale. Now the first wash is dry. I come back in with the second wash, which is the dark of the value study. And again, keep them very simple. Underneath the boat, there's some contact shadows. The poles underneath the gangway, they are also in the dark because they're covered by the shadow. And the gangways in the back, I try not to make it as dark, so only a few dark areas there so that it won't compete with the gangway in the front. And I use a little bit of water to bring out that dark on the body of the boat, so just to give it a little bit of transition. And now I come back in with the middle value and I start to paint some ripples on the lake surface. They're actually quite light. If you kind of squint your eyes, they are almost in the light value. But I still decided to paint them, make them just a tiny little bit darker so the lake won't look so empty. But because this is just a value study, I just want to get the idea of the basic shape and the value. So now onto the final color version of the painting. I'm going to do a little bit more wet onto wet. I'm also making the drawing just a little bit tighter so the final product will look a little bit better as well. Also try to spend a little bit more time drawing the boat. Now you don't have to make it look like industrial drawing of a boat, but try to make it look good. Try to make sure the shape looks decent. A good painting usually have good looking shapes. And drawing is a good time to make sure your painting has that. So while you don't have to spend a lot of time doing very super accurate drawing, do spend some time and some care into your line drawings before you start painting. So I also draw a rough shape of the reflection. Just give me a little bit more reference when I'm starting to paint. So I erase some of the rough lines and take a look at my value study one last time. Get that plan in my head before I start. And I start to go for it. So I'm pre-mixing some of the color that I'm going to use for the first wash. Now, the first wash again is actually the white of the paper in the value study. So it's all about light value, the color of the light. So the sky and the basic color of the lake. The time of day is almost sunset, so the sky is a little bit blue, transition into warmer color to like pinkish purple color as it approaches the horizon. And while it is still wet, I try to go back in and paint some darker blue just to give some sense of cloud. The day is fairly clear, but a few hints of cloud. And I connect that shape directly underneath, so the sky and the water is one single shape, one single wash. At this point, I'm actually not trying to separate any shape. So before I finish the wash, I quickly go back in and start to paint in some warm light on the boat and the gangway so that we got some warm sunlight on the boat. And then I continue the wash, added some purple, some pink colors on the side, try to reflect the color of the sky, and also make it just a tiny little bit darker. And here I try to mix a drier mixture to paint some very soft ripples. This is to add a little bit of the variations on the lake surface. Don't be afraid to mix them just a little bit darker and thicker because we are painting this wet onto wet, so when the wash is dry, these are going to fade quite a bit. So the bottom is still drying and we don't want to touch that, but the upper part of the painting, the sky and the background, these are pretty much dry. So I can go back in and start to paint in the background. So very simple as the value study, just a little bit of articulation on the silhouette to suggest some pine trees, some white gap for the architecture details. And then I try to finish off the background by adding a little bit of warm colors underneath, suggesting some trees that are lit by the sun that's just a little bit closer, but also mostly just give it a little bit of color variation for the background. It is the background, so keep it simple, keep it pushed back so that we can focus on the boat. So after I feel the paper a little bit, I know that the bottom part is dry enough for me to start painting. So the middle value on the boat, we're painting the body of the boat where we got the gray paint. And even with that gray paint, there are some warmer gray on the left where the sun is hitting and some cooler gray on the right where it's more in the dark. So even though they're all grays, they got some very subtle color temperature changes. And now I'm painting the window. The window on the left is a lot warmer than the right because the sun is hitting. It actually got some reflection of this golden sun color. And now I'm doing some wet on to wet on the body of the boat just to get that dark to light transition from the gray paint area. We want a soft edge to suggest the form is turning. Now I connect the shape of the boat to the reflection of the boat, and I also go ahead and start to paint the reflection of the gangway as well. Try to make use of this connection while it is still wet. And now I go back to the gangway and start to paint some middle value in. I try to preserve a little bit of the light so that it can feel like the sun is hitting the gangway. We got this warm wooden colors. So try to finish all that shape while I still can. And I just go ahead and paint some more reflections. And it's very important try to keep your reflection simple and straight. Try not to paint a lot of curved lines and try not to make it too complicated. And also be mindful of the color of your reflection as well. If the object has this warm color, then it should reflect on the reflections. So I'm also start to paint some ripples and reflections on the distant waters, just to make a little bit more variations on the water surface so it doesn't look so bare. And I also start to paint some bigger ripples and bigger reflections for the foreground. That is in the photo as well, so I try to paint that in. Of course, I try to simplify as much as possible. This is supposed to be a very subtle, very quiet, peaceful painting, so I try to make things very simple, make things look very clean. By not painting a lot of details, I don't want to paint 1,000 tiny little ripples. And now I'm onto the third wash, which is the dark. So the stuff in the interior of the boat, behind the windows, the antennas on top of the boat, some details, some of the dark areas, and things like that. These are the details that are going to make the painting more complete. So adding some more dark details on the boat. We also add some dark shadow part, some contact shadow underneath the boat. And we connect that into the reflection because the reflection also has some dark area as well because it's the reflection of the boat. So if we add some dark on the boat, you should add that in the reflection as well. And while we're doing that, we start to add some dark for the gangway as well. Again, we did all that in the value study. So when I'm doing the color version, I had a pretty good idea where should I go next. So again, this workflow I learned from Andy Evenson since the beginning of the year, and I just find so much benefit from doing a value study first before I go into the color version. So the painting is taking place. I'm adding some handrail, some more details that I didn't include in my value study. And now I'm painting some highlight back with white gouache. And I decided to use white gouache instead of just paint around all the light because I want to have a nice clean flat wash. So if I keep trying to paint around small highlights, that's going to make the process a lot more difficult and might end up a dirty looking painting. So here is the finished painting. I actually go back in later doing a glaze on the water surface to make the water a little bit darker, which helps to make the boat pops a little bit more. I really like how it turns out, and I hope you like this painting and demo as well. I hope you enjoyed that demo. Now I want to hear it from you. How was your year? What are some of your New Year's resolutions, and were you able to accomplish them? Leave a comment down below and let's continue this conversation. Again, thank you so much for this amazing year at Cafe Watercolor. I appreciate you, and if you're new here, welcome. I hope you like my content and subscribe because this is going to be a great year ahead of us, and I hope you are along for the ride. I am Eric from Cafe Watercolor. See you next year.